Good morning, and thank you very much for the introduction. So today I'm going to be speaking about the new Model Work Health and Safety Regulations for Psychosocial Risks and the new Model Work Health and Safety Code of Practice, Managing Psychosocial Hazards at Work, both of which have recently been published by Safe Work Australia. But first, there is a lot happening in the mental health space at the moment. So what does mental health mean in a work health and safety context? Work health and safety is about preventing workers being harmed at work. The most effective way to prevent harm to workers' mental health is not exposing them to psychosocial hazards. If you can't eliminate the risk, then you must minimize it. This may mean redesigning the work you do or the way that you do it. You cannot effectively manage a risk by attempting to change how workers respond to it. In the same way you wouldn't send workers to the gym to make them more resilient to back injuries from carrying heavy loads, you shouldn't manage psychosocial risk by sending workers to yoga or trying to increase their resilience. Work health and safety is not about initiatives to improve workers' well-being or promote the positives. These can certainly have really positive impacts and may be something you engage with as an employer of choice. However, they won't manage work health and safety risks, and it's important to first ensure your workplace is safe by protecting workers from any work-related psychosocial hazards. So work health and safety laws place a primary duty of care on the person conducting the business or undertaking, such as the employer. This requires PCBUs to ensure, so far as is reasonably practicable, the physical and psychological health and safety of workers and other persons. Work health and safety laws also place duties on officers, such as company directors or other very senior leaders, to exercise due diligence. So this is a very proactive duty, and it includes things like keeping up to date with guidance, such as the new Model Code of Practice, ensuring the organisation has effective reporting mechanisms for harmful behaviours such as bullying, ensuring the business has appropriate processes for identifying hazards, and that the business dedicates enough resources to controlling the risks. Work health and safety laws do also place duties on workers and other persons to take reasonable care for their own health and safety, not adversely affect the health and safety of others, and comply with reasonable work health and safety directions. Workers must also cooperate with policies or procedures related to work health and safety. In practice, this might mean following notified behavioural policies, such as standards around preventing bullying and harassment. Safe Work Australia recently published new Model Work Health and Safety Regulations for Psychosocial Risks and a new Model Code of Practice on Managing Psychosocial Hazards at Work. These both provide practical guidance on how duty holders can meet their work health and safety duties. So the model regulations in the Model Code have recently been released, but they don't change what PCBUs must do. Instead, they provide clarity on how to meet that existing work health and safety duty. This means even if the model regs or the code of practice haven't been adopted in your jurisdiction, they can still provide you with useful information on what you can do in your workplace. I acknowledge that some jurisdictions have or are planning to publish their own codes of practice. These may look a little bit different, but they will all help you meet your work health and safety duty. The main differences relate to how the information is explained or presented. For example, in our model code, we talk about high job demands, but I understand New South Wales uses the term role overload. They both mean the same thing, having too much work to do or work that is too hard. It's just a different way to talk about it. So the Model Work Health and Safety Regulations define a psychosocial hazard as a hazard that may cause psychological harm, whether or not it may also cause physical harm. This is because, as well as harming people's mental health, psychosocial hazards may also cause physical injuries or illness, such as contributing to musculoskeletal injuries, chronic disease, or physical injuries following fatigue-related incidents. The regulations clarify that psychosocial hazards can arise from the design or management of work, the work environment, the plant or things used at the workplace, or workplace behaviours or interactions. The Model Code provides a list of common psychosocial hazards, such as poor support and remote or isolated work. It's important to consider these hazards holistically because they may interact or combine to create new, changed, or higher risks. For example, high workloads may create a higher risk if workers can't take breaks, don't have the right tools to do their job, or workplace relationships are poor. It's important to remember that different people may call hazards different things or talk about them in different ways. For example, instead of saying they're experiencing high job demands, workers may talk about feeling stressed, burnt out, worried, or unmotivated, or they could raise concerns about the workload, tasks, or timeframes. So the new regulations require PCBUs to identify reasonably foreseeable psychosocial hazards, implement control measures to eliminate psychosocial risks so far as is reasonably practicable. If it is not reasonably practicable to eliminate the risks, implement control measures to minimize them so far as is reasonably practicable. They require PCBUs to maintain control measures so they remain effective. This includes ensuring controls are fit for purpose, suitable for the work, and set up and used correctly. And review and, if necessary, revise control measures to ensure the work remains without risks to health and safety. So the Model Code provides substantial practical guidance on how to apply this risk management process to psychosocial risks. It also walks you through consulting with workers, for example, through toolbox talks, surveys, or risk assessment tools such as the People at Work tool. Consulting, cooperating, and coordinating activities with other duty holders, how to identify hazards and apply the risks of that risk management process. It also includes some information on conducting work health and safety investigations and recording the risk management process and outcomes. As well as capturing that risk management process, the Model Code also includes a wide range of examples of what hazards can look like in different workplaces and some example control measures that could be implemented. For example, scheduling tasks and material deliveries to avoid intense or sustained high or low job demands. The Model Work Health and Safety regulations require PCBUs to have regard to all relevant matters when determining the control measures to implement. They also set out some specific matters which must be considered, and I'll go through those briefly. So they include the duration, frequency, and severity of the exposure to hazards. So this recognises that the risk of harm and the potential severity of any subsequent injury or illness increases with the frequency, duration, and severity of exposure. This can assist PCBUs to assess the risk and therefore what control measures are reasonably practicable in your circumstances. Because psychosocial hazards may interact or combine to create new or higher risks, PCBUs must also have regard to this. They must also consider the design of the work, including any job demands and the tasks involved, as well as the systems of work, and this includes how work is managed, organised, and supported. This means considering any hazards that may arise from the design or systems of work, but also how the work could be redesigned to manage those psychosocial risks. Under the regulations, PCBUs must also have regard to the design, layout, and environmental conditions of the workplace. This includes providing safe means of entering and exiting the workplace and safe welfare facilities. This duty extends to workers' accommodation, where Section 19(4) of the Work Health and Safety Act applies. So this would include PCBU provided accommodation on remote work sites, those types of things. These matters clarify that PCBUs must consider risks that may arise from or could be controlled by the physical aspects of the workplace. For example, providing secure changing facilities could help you reduce the risk of sexual harassment in the workplace. PCBUs must also have regard to the plant substances and structures of the workplace. This recognises that these things may create risks and can also be used to control them. For example, ensuring workers have the right equipment or tools needed to perform the job properly and safely can increase support and reduce high job demands. PCBUs must also identify any harmful workplace interactions or behaviours such as violence, aggression, bullying, harassment, sexual harassment. This could also include conflict or just poor workplace relationships, and then how to implement control measures to manage these related risks. And finally, duty holders must have regard to the information, training, instruction, and supervision provided to workers. Just as a quick recap, under work health and safety laws, PCBUs must manage all risks to workers' health and safety, including psychosocial risks. The new regulations and model code, which have been published on our website, can help you to do this. And we've also published a range of other resources which can help you in this space. But for more information on what applies in your own jurisdiction or advice on your specific circumstances, we encourage you to speak to your work health and safety regulator. Thank you very much.